Hey guys, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for all the love on my UK videos recently. They've been doing really well and I'm really grateful because I worked very, very hard on them. So if you haven't checked those out already, I really would recommend it, and thank you guys so much for watching. So today, as you can tell by the title of this video, we will be talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And as usual, I have thoughts. So, right before we get started, I'm not a film professional at all, I'm just a casual moviegoer. If you think I might have misinterpreted something wrong, please feel free to correct me down in the comments below, but just be respectful because this is just my opinion and just my impression after watching it the first time. Okay, so just a little bit of a summary. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood follows Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio as an actor, as a stuntman and actor, respectively. And basically Leo's career is kind of going downhill. He's been in Hollywood a while and he's kind of peaked and is like on what feels like the down, you know, he's going out. Like he's not as popular anymore, he's not getting as many roles. So that's basically the premise, and then they throw in this like alternative plotline about the Sharon Tate murders with Margot Robbie obviously as Sharon Tate. So this movie in theory sounds good, right? But I have several issues with it. First of all, the tension. Like, I don't know if that's the right word, but like, this movie doesn't feel like a movie, which I understand a lot of people think is like a directorial choice by Tarantino, which it very well could be, but in comparison to his other movies that I've seen, such as like Kill Bill or Inglourious, which Kill Bill is like probably one of my favorite movies of his, it doesn't feel as planned out. Usually when I watch Tarantino movies, I watch them to feel, it almost is like feeling, it's like basically there are like all these loose ends and everything's just like feels like it's going different directions, but then he somehow manages to tie up the loose ends at the end of the movie, and it's really satisfying and it makes sense. He usually writes in different directions and then brings it all back together. This movie, however, literally so many of the scenes, there was no point, it felt like, and honestly there might have been a point, but as a casual moviegoer who's just kind of watching, there were so many scenes that just felt like nothing. Like, there were so many driving scenes, and I saw someone say, like, it's representative of life in LA, but, like, movies, so much goes into producing movies, and that's not, like, something that I've come up with. These movies have, like, billions of dollars of budget, and if you're just gonna have, like, extensive amounts of something that really doesn't feel like it's necessary, like, granted, in the driving scenes, the set design is immaculate. That's something I think that's super cool about this movie, like all the Hollywood streets being redone to the 60s. The set design is amazing for the westerns and the like things that take place in the 60s Hollywood, but it just felt very like meandering. It just kind of felt like you were watching like a very elaborate like day in the life or like week in the life, not necessarily in the same like YouTube style or something like that, but just it felt very meandering. And for a movie, and especially a movie director and writer who usually has purpose behind every scene that is put in his movies, for example, like Kill Bill, almost all of the scenes will tie up into something for the resolution. All of them. There's not a scene out of place, there's not a scene where I'm like, and while I'm watching it, before I watch the end, right, I might be like, this is out of place, but everything comes back together, and when you get to the end, you realize that all this, what felt like random stuff or meandering, had a purpose. I did not feel like all the scenes in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood had a purpose. And that, it was kind of frustrating, honestly. Like, there were just things that, like, I felt like the exploration of Leonardo DiCaprio's, like, character's, you know, downfall from Hollywood was really like an interesting thing to explore, like being on the out, like how does that affect you? You can see how his character is like really struggling with it, like in that scene when he talks to the little girl. But like it never really resolves, and when they do try to give some sort of resolution, it's from the point of view of a narrator saying he went, oh, by the way, this is like totally spoilers. It's from the point of view of a narrator saying that he went overseas to like film Italian movies and is now coming back. And sure, part of that I think could be intentional, because I think kind of a little bit of the point of the movie, or just like a message theme of it, is that no career in Hollywood is certain, right? Because Leo's character goes across the sea, films these movies, comes back, doesn't even know if he's going to have a career. The uncertainty of Hollywood, fine. But then it just felt weird to tie it up with Sharon Tate, who doesn't really have much of a character. And I feel like that's like so, it just feels like selling Margot Robbie short. But I feel like having Sharon Tate not really do much and just kind of, there was an interview I think where he said that it was like trying to show her everyday life, but like it almost felt like you could have had her in this movie and not had her be Sharon Tate, which I don't think is a great, like, because Sharon Tate was a real person, and Margot Robbie's character doesn't even really feel like, I was so confused, right, because part of this was like the Sharon Tate murders, you know, I was ready to do that, and just like in Inglourious, there was like an alternate timeline, obviously, but it didn't feel like necessary. It felt like they could have made the movie and Margot Robbie's character could have just not been Sharon Tate, which I don't think is great considering that that was one of the selling points of the movie and one of the things he was trying to explore. I feel like Margot Robbie's character could have just been like the next door neighbor for all we know. And for people that don't actually know about the Sharon Tate murders, I'm sure they must be pretty confused. Like, because, you know, Margot Robbie's character is just like this random person. And if they don't do any further research or figure out what actually happened, then they must just be like, also, the hippies. I don't mean to say that as rude, but that's what they call them in the movie. Thank you. SD card converter. Yeah, he watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with me. No, so like the hippie characters. Okay, also, when they go into that hippie camp, I might be missing like 10 beats of this plot, but like, what was the point of the scene with George? Like, please, someone enlighten me, because I feel like I'm missing so much, because like they just did this whole like bit basically where it's like this whole thing with George and Brad Pitt's acting like they're like kidnapping him, and then George is alive, like, and there was no point. And like a scene like that usually would be like wrapped up later, you know, or at least I'd assume it would be because it's Tarantino, but no, it wasn't, and it was just kind of like this random thing with Margaret Qualley's character and Brad Pitt like randomly just beating some dude up. Like, so many confusing things about it, and I feel like I'm just rambling. I probably honestly need to make like a script or set of points for these videos sometime, but I felt like it was just so pointless. And I feel like that's the worst thing it could be for a high budget movie, because there was like just so many meandering things, and it could have been a bold choice by Tarantino, fine, but just because it was meandering doesn't mean it has to be like uninteresting. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was just such lack of like payoff, like, and when we finally got to that final like fight scene, and then he goes over to the neighbor's house, the movie literally ended, and my dad, you know, the one who just came in here, looks at me and is like, you know, watching for my reaction, and I look over and I'm like, that was the end? Like, there's no satisfying ending or even purpose to all of it. It feels like I could have just kept watching that movie for like 4 hours and there would have been no resolution, because they're just like doing their everyday stuff. And sure, like I said, parts of it I think are done well, like Leo's character's Hollywood burnout. That's like an interesting thing to explore, I think. That one scene with Margot Robbie where she goes to the theater to watch her own movie and see if people are like responding to it, I think that was really cute. But like, that's like only a little bit of some of the things. Like, some things were funny, like the film, like the production was beautiful, like I said, like all the sets and stuff. I think the camera work was really good. Like, at the beginning of that movie, when they like literally the first scene, well, not the first scene, but close to it, when they like, you know, back shot from that, like, I think it's a movie poster of Leo's character with like the big, you know, smile and teeth, and then we keep seeing that throughout the movie because it's at his house. I thought that was cool, like just a cool bit of repetition and like imagery. I don't know, there's not really a meaning behind it, but it's something that I thought was kind of neat because you see it over and over again. But yeah, overall, I just, normally when I watch Tarantino films, you feel kind of like you figured something out, or like you're fulfilled, like you've just, you know, you've been piecing these things together, or he's been putting them together for you, and you've gotten to the end, like at Kill Bill, all this random stuff. I keep mentioning Kill Bill because that's honestly one of my favorite ones by him. And even Inglourious, which isn't so much like Kill Bill, where it like pieces everything together. It's more alternate history. They somehow still managed to make that quite interesting, and maybe it's because it's a more well-known historical event, like than the Sharon Tate murders. Even though they're still well-known, they're just not as well-known as World War II, obviously. But it just did not feel fulfilling or have a payoff to me. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm sorry if this entire thing is just kind of like slandering the movie, but I just watched it and I just don't know how to feel, honestly. It just felt so pointless. And I hate that because you know that Tarantino is worthy of making good movies, but this one just wasn't it for me. I think it was mostly the writing, like everything else was practically perfect. Oh, and the feet. Don't even get me started. I'll just do a quick spiel about this because I feel like so many people have already talked about this. It's very well known that Tarantino basically like has a foot fetish and has an excessive amount of feet shots in this movie, as we know from the Margaret Qualley scene. But it's like excessive, and I get it almost a little bit for Margaret Qualley's character. I think the actress is still uncomfortable. If you watch like an interview with her, there's this one where she just like is totally uncomfortable with the question. Like she was just like, no, I didn't really want my feet in it, something like that. But like she definitely, like, it made a little bit more sense for her because, you know, like hippie types, like, oh, there's my dog, like, not the, you know, like the barefoot is kind of a bit of the aesthetic for them. Like when you first see her and her friends, like I didn't really think much of it. The dashboard scene in the car is excessive. But everyone else, like Sharon Tate, who's supposed to be like really put together, or at least not put together, like they present her as very like, you know, presentable. It doesn't seem very in character for her to take off her shoes and put her dirty feet up in the middle of her movie that she's watching. Just saying, it was a little much just for this movie. But yeah, my overall thoughts is it was a beautifully designed, produced, and shot movie, but I think the writing and the plot was a little bit too much all over the place with like not enough payoff or motivation. It just kind of felt like a bunch of random beautiful shots put together to make this movie. And that's it for me for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I kind of just rambled the whole time. If you haven't watched this movie, I don't know if I would recommend you to check it out, but it was definitely an experience, so if you want to watch it, go ahead. I might have just spoiled a bit of it. I tried to kind of skirt around it, but yeah, that's it. Alright, thanks so much for watching.